Welcome to all of you to this talk on writers as translators. Mera naam Anika Wattu hai, and I'm incredibly honored to share this space with you today, and very even more honored to share the space with such brilliant writers and translators who, without further ado, I want to introduce and invite to the stage. I am so excited to have here with us in Lahore today at the Indus Conclave Festival, Daisy Rockwell, the award-winning translator of Hindi and Urdu literature. Daisy's translation of the Hindi writer Geet Anjali Shree's book Tomb of Sand won the 2022 International Booker Prize. This was the first novel in a South Asian language to win the International Booker Prize. The book also won the 2022 Warwick Prize for Women in Translation. Please join me in warmly welcoming Daisy Rockwell to the stage. My next guest for today is Syed Kashif Raza, who is a journalist, a poet, a fiction writer, and translator. He wears many hats. He has authored 5 books, including 2 volumes of poetry. His first novel, Char Darvesh or Ek Kachwa, was published in October 2018 and has won the UBL Literary Award in 2019. He has translated the writings of great writers such as Milan Kundera, George Lohi Borges, James Joyce, and Noam Chomsky into Urdu for the first time. Very interestingly, he has also translated Muhammad Hanif's novel, A Case of Exploding Mangoes, into Urdu. I'm very excited to be joined here by Syed Kashif Raza. Our third guest for today is Huri Nurani, who is a writer and publisher who runs the Karachi publishing house Maktaba-e-Danial. Maktaba-e-Danial is known for having published many renowned authors like Mushtaq Ahmed Yusufi, Sayyid Sibte Hassan, Faiz Ahmed Faiz, Iftikhar Arif, and one of my absolute favorites, Fahmida Riaz, Habib Jalib, and many other great progressive writers of Pakistan. She has translated also, interestingly, and I want to bring this up in the conversation, Hendrik Borovik's famous play, Interview in Buenos Aires, from Russian to Urdu in 1987. Please warmly welcome Huri Nurani. So the first question I want to ask, because the title of this talk is Writers as Translators, and all of the people here on this panel have 2 distinct practices. So all of you are writers in your own right, and you also have a translation practice which you have devoted a lot of time and energy to. So my first question is, I guess, when you write and when you translate, have there been any overlaps, any interesting moments where translating a certain text, it changed the way you were writing in your own language maybe, or it changed the way you do creative writing entirely? Any memorable moment like that, maybe you could shed light on. And I'll start by asking Daisy to please answer this.
Okay. I'm also a visual artist, so that's a different kind of area of overlap. But I feel like every time I translate an author, they teach me something, that every one of my authors is a teacher as well as somebody that I'm translating. And so I can't think of anything specific, but I feel like each time I finish a book, I know more about writing. And also because once you've translated something, you have to edit it a million times. You know, like it's not done when you do 1 draft or when you do 5 drafts. Like I say, the magic number is 10 at least. But you become this amazing editor. So even when I'm writing straight into English, I find that I'm incredibly economical, almost too economical sometimes, because I keep because I'm so used to cutting out stray words from my translations. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is with my art, my visual art, I actually started a few years ago with Aftab Ahmed, who you're friends with, the translator, was an Urdu translator and Urdu teacher at Columbia University in New York. And we started a series of, I would give him an classic American poem like Robert Frost's, and he was not familiar with this at all. And he would translate it into Urdu, and I would help him. And then I would make a painting where I would create a calligraphy of his, because I love Urdu calligraphy. I'd make a calligraphy of his translation. So that was a time when it literally crossed over into my art, the translation.
Thank you. That's so interesting. I wasn't actually thinking of your visual art, but I'm going to come to that as well.
Okay.
Kashif, can I ask you the same question?
For me, translation is like when I go to Western museums, I see there are young artists. They are copying certain artistic paintings. They are copying those paintings line by line, shade by shade. So for me, translation is like that. Whenever I do translation, my style of translation is that I try to replicate the style as well. And when I write that English structure into Urdu, that helps me, that teaches me a lot. So I sometimes I try to replicate that in Urdu as well. Like one of my favorite writers in Urdu is Muhammad Khalid Akhtar. He used to structure his Urdu sentences in such a way that people used to say that these are English structures, these are English sentence structures. And he was very fond of reading English literature, especially English fiction. So he is one of my favorite writers, and the thing that I learn from translation is that I want to replicate the structure, the writers that I like. Basically, I translate the writers that I like. And the writers that I like are not because of their topics, but because of their styles, but because of their sentence structures. So in translating those writers, I try to replicate those structures into Urdu. So it helps me a lot.
You mentioned Khalid Akhtar, and he's been one of those writers who's been instrumental for me as well. Just, I think when I started translating, his Bilal Tanveer's translation of his book was one of the first translations I read, and it was exactly a superb translation. And structure, so the rhythm and the structure of language is what moves you.
And the
within
sentence structure as well.
the sentence structure.
Because in Urdu there isn't a multiplicity of structures. There isn't I think, as far as I think, there isn't a multiplicity of sentence structures, and there isn't a multiplicity of styles as far as the fiction is concerned. I'm not talking about the poetry. Urdu poetry is
Very
hugely great, I think. But in fiction, we have to learn many things from the Western fiction, and one of these things is the style, and the style of different writers, the different structures of their sentences and their paragraphs and their plot structures. We have to learn many things from them. So in translating these writers like Milan Kundera, like James Joyce,
Yes.
who is very difficult
Labyrinth,
to translate,
yeah.
they teach quite a lot.
Yes, I'm sure, absolutely. Huri, same question for you, and I'm thinking both of your translation work, which we were just speaking about before we came to this panel. Huri and I were discussing her translation from Russian, and then we were talking about your publishing. So any thoughts on both translation and your own kind of writing, or even as a publisher, how you look at these things?
So thank you, but just to put you straight, I'm not a writer, and one translation doesn't make me
Editor.
a translator.
Yes.
But yes, I am a publisher of lots of translations, and I do feel that, you know, being a student of linguistics and literature, when I get a book, a translation, I get very involved in it, in the editing of the book, as Kashif was saying, in seeing how the structure changes between language to language. And I find that a lot of times when translating from English into Urdu, translators do seem to get confused by the structure, because I feel it is a very different sentence structure in English
Yes.
and in Urdu. And if it's not put right, it doesn't sound right.
Yes.
It doesn't make sense sometimes. So, my approach to translations as a publisher is a lot from the eye of an editor,
Yes. Yes.
you know.
Yes,
And
and we can speak more about that. I want to come
yeah, yeah.
back to that. I want to come back to you, Daisy, and ask you about the book that's really caused a stir in the global kind of literary landscape. You know, it was the first Indian book to become famous in this way. Although, of course, you also have translated other stories before, which were Indian stories. Many translators have been working on South Asian literature. But Tombs of Sand, once it won the award, I guess what I want to ask you is also like a personal question as a translator who's worked in Hindi and Urdu. How did this moment of recognition did it change anything in your practice, in your work? And now, of course, I'm also thinking about all the political connotations. Lots of translators here in Lahore, young translators say we're working on something, but it's so hard to get published in the West, or it's so hard to get that recognition. How has your experience with that been like?
Well, first of all, yes, it's very hard to get translations published from South Asian literature in the West, in the US and the UK. And when I translated Tomb of Sand, I had from the start a UK publisher because they actually had heard about the book and wanted it
Yes.
translated. But that was my 10th book.
10th
And
book.
it was the first one that left India. So that's how bad it is. And since then, because of my recognition, I've been able to get more books placed in the US and the UK, but it's still not very easy. There's not an openness to the literatures. And even, you know, for example, it's not enough that I won a big award. They want like things that are just like Tomb of Sand,
Oh.
which there is nothing like.
So like
Tomb of-
thematically, like Tomb of Sand.
Yeah, like with crazy. I mean, we've been talking about sentences and experimental writing, and that writing is very experimental, and the sentence structure is crazy, and the author is, you know, breaking all the rules in terms of grammar and making up words and kind of messing with plot and all these things. So there's not another book like it. So I can't say, yes, I have 10 more authors just like this, but there's a very narrow-minded approach in Western publishing that if something is a success, they want to see the next thing to be exactly like it. So if you bring out a unique book, it maybe opens some doors, but it doesn't open enough doors.
Kashif, I want to turn to you, and Kashif's novel Char Darvesh or Ek Kachwa was translated into German, and it was launched in 9 cities in Germany this year. So it's been very popular, and I mean, it's wonderful to hear of an Urdu novel becoming popular in this way. How was the process for you? What Daisy has just spoken about is the narrow-minded approach in Western publishing that doesn't allow a great deal of variety in terms of diverse voices to filter in when it comes to the translation stage. So how was it, the experience of for getting this book translated and actually for it to become this kind of successful implementation of a translation? How did that happen for you?
Yeah, first of all, it was a pleasant news that somebody whom I didn't know, Miss Elmuth Degener, she got my number and she contacted me and she said that she had got my novel in Urdu from Islamabad, and she had bought some other novels as well, but she said that only that novel was the one that she kept reading. So now she wanted to translate it, and she thought that I must be asking her for so many thousands of euros, but I said that it's already a pleasant news that you want to translate that, and it was a very pleasant experience. I went there and I met her, and she's a very diligent translator, and her interest in languages is very vast. She knows about, I think, whatever language I suggested to her, she knew that language. She knows about 15 or 16 languages.
Really?
Yeah, many languages.
She's prolific.
Yeah, prolific.
wow.
Yeah, multilingual. So and she knows Persian, she knows Hindi, she knows Urdu, she knows Pashto, and she has done research on languages which are little known to me as well, like like languages which are spoken by some thousand people, like in China or like in some far-flung area of Afghanistan as well. So it was a very pleasant experience, and it was also a pleasant experience to meet people, because they're in a small city, Willigst, in Germany. We went there. There was a festival there, and the pleasant thing there in Willigst was that they were not concerned about the enormity of people, the enormity of participants coming there. So they had registered some people who were academics and students, and there were only about 24 people, and they were not concerned about the popularity of their festival. That was a closed festival. So we spent 3 days there, and it was very pleasant talking to all those academics and students. And the students were those who had read my novel in German. So it was a unique experience to hear from them about my own novel, and hear from people who came from German background. So their questions were also very different from the questions that I used to be asked in Pakistan. So it was altogether a pleasant experience, and the experience of meeting so many people and talking to them, and also traveling along so many cities and meeting so many people, and also the interest that they shown in Pakistani writings, that was unique. I was expecting that the Commonwealth countries should have more interest in Pakistani writings, and especially Pakistani writings in Urdu. They do have interest in Pakistani writings, but I think that they are more, the English writings of Pakistan are more known to them, more known to the Commonwealth countries. But I feel that the real experience of Pakistani living, the real experience of Pakistani society and the Pakistani history is there in our Urdu literature, in our Urdu fiction and our Urdu poetry. So that's a thing that Commonwealth countries, the people in Commonwealth countries should think. And Daisy is one, and Daisy is interested in South Asian literature, and she has successfully translated some books as well. So people like her are exemplary, and I think they are commendable. And altogether, that experience in Germany was quite pleasant. Yeah.
Absolutely, congratulations on that. And I mean, I think it's very heartening, and it makes us optimistic as writers, right? As people who are trying to get on this path, which some of you are on, to hear that there is some success. The picture is not entirely bleak. We've heard somewhat from both of you from the side of writers. I want to turn to the publishing side now and think कि जब एक पाकिस्तानी publishing press के पास एक किताब आती है और वो एक translation होती है, what are some of the things they think about in making that crucial decision? Am I going to publish this? And Huri, I want to ask you this from a publishing angle, with you have considerable expertise and years of experience with your press. What are some of the key considerations that you take into account when you look at a work in translation and you consider publishing it in Pakistan?
So, just like any manuscript which comes, even if it's not for translation, the first thing is to see what the topic is, what the subject is, how interesting it is for this, for the local reader.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if it's a translation, you have to see which language it has been translated from. Is it translated from the original language? Is it a second translation? If it's a second translation, like, we published The Vegetarian recently from the English translation,
wow.
not from the
Yeah.
Korean.
Yes.
So I had to see, who the original translator was.
Yes.
And how well known. Of course, she was a very well known translator who also got the Booker Prize for her translation. So that, of course, plays a part. Then the translation itself. If it's a first time translator, then again, I have to see how well it's translated. Is it, even if it's not perfect, can it be redeemed through editing, or can it be redeemed through talking with the translator, going over it, if the topic is so interesting that it's holding my interest and I really want to publish it. So that is another thing, of course. One has to see how competent the translator is. Another thing which, of course, comes into play is my own subjective
Yeah.
feelings. I have a certain worldview, and all my publishing goes according to that.
Yeah.
So I have to see if it falls within my, the principles of my publishing and my own, worldview and what I feel is.
Do you want to say a bit more about that, about the worldview or what?
So
triggers
my
it?
publishing house was, it was founded by my late father, and it had a very specific point of view कि इससे हम सिर्फ रोशन ख्याल अदब छापेंगे,
हाँ.
progressive literature. And this was 1967 when people didn't want to touch Sibte Hassan, didn't want to touch anything to do with socialism, Marxism, Leninism, So that's the kind of background. And my father had a background of being closely associated with the progressive writers movement and all the people who were in that movement.
Yeah.
And so, of course, the whole background of the publishing
Yes.
house is connected to that.
Of course
So
it is.
To this date,
Yeah.
we try, to keep it that way.
Yes. Yeah. And you have published some of those amazing progressive writers. I mean, even many
Yes.
women poets you have
Yes,
published.
yes, yes.
I'm-
Pakistani and Indian.
Yes, yes. This also leads to my next question, which I think as a woman, and I'm seeing many women in this audience as well, one of the conversations when we look at like global conversations about translation right now is about certain writers and translators making a more conscious effort to publish more women. The idea is that there is an underrepresentation of women writers speaking in their voices about the world that they interpret. Daisy, of course, you have published Geetanjali Shree's book. You have also published Khadija Mastoor's Angan into the Women's Courtyard. So that's also something that stands out in your portfolio. Is gender and conversations about gender, does that play a big role in your work and practice as a translator?
Yes. What actually is funny is that I'd completed my fourth book in translation, and suddenly I sort of looked at my stack, and it hadn't occurred to me before that they were all men. They were all male authors. And this
Really?
kind of coincided actually with the Me Too era.
Yes.
So I became a little bit disgusted with myself. And I'd also started to be more conscious of how much patriarchy is embedded in narratives by male authors, and the male gaze is sort of always fixed on the women characters, so we often don't get the subjectivity of the women characters. We sort of get their appearance and the perspective of the men. But we are really, as you know, and this is not just in Urdu and it's not just in English, it's everywhere, that we are so used to this perspective that we just accept it.
Yes.
And so I guess I decided to go on a diet.
Yes.
And so I was not only just translating women authors, but just reading women authors as well. So I went on a women-only diet. I was going to be for a year.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Ah.
But then once the year was up, I picked up a book by a male author, and right away he led with the breasts being described before anything else, and I thought, okay, I'm not ready to go back
Yeah.
there. Since then I've only translated female authors, and what I love about because as a translator, as I said, you get 10 drafts or whatever, you're like deep into a work, you read it again and again and again. I love seeing all these women's subjectivities brought to light, and translation is a kind of an inherently political act, in my opinion, because you are choosing to open up a perspective, like an open up a window, say, to into of one culture into another. So you're sort of building a bridge or like giving people the opportunity to see other things. So I've chosen to open up these women's worlds, and I find and that now I'm not going back.
Yes, please.
From Daisy. When I was reading a travelogue by Bill Bryson, I was thinking that he's writing just like our Mustansir Hussain Tarad with the same male gaze. So the male gaze is not a problem which is specific to
Yeah.
Pakistani Indian
No,
writing.
no.
So if they can handle it when publishing it in English, why can't they publish it in translation from Urdu and Hindi?
Yeah, no, it's true. It's not just an Urdu problem at all. And no offense to the male author on the stage and his gaze, but it's, you know, we just want to see more of what women are experiencing, and that goes both ways. Like, I think it's interesting to translate women's writing into Urdu and Hindi.
Yes.
I don't do that personally, but people should be doing it and bringing in those perspectives and those sentences into this language, into Urdu, as well as going the other way. I think that it helps a lot to broaden our horizons.
No, absolutely. I take both of your points, and of course, I agree, Kashif, with what you're saying, which is that this is not a problem specific to South Asia. When we look at the European Canyon, when we look at so many regions across the world, the male gaze and the objectification or the depiction of women in narrow ways is something that's quite universal in literature. When we talk about corrective steps from the publishing angle, is this something you think about or engage with a lot, Huri? Which is, okay, is this text, let's say you face a text or someone brings a text which is stylistically brilliant, you know, it's great, it's a good piece of literature. Because this is something that I have faced, and I was just talking to you about this before the panel, के बहुत अच्छा काम है, लेकिन उसमें जो depiction of women है, वो बहुत reductive है, या वो बहुत narrow है, या वो उसी तरह से framed है, जैसे डेजी ने कहा. So is that something that you would then, is that problematic? How would you engage with that?
तो मेरे साथ बहुत ज़्यादा तो नहीं हुआ है, क्योंकि मेरे पास ज़ाहिर है इस तरह के मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट बहुत कम आते हैं, नोइंग हु आई एम एंड व्हाट आई रिप्रेजेंट. बट ये ज़रूर हुआ है कि आई हैव कम टू सी सम ऑफ द बुक्स दैट वर पब्लिश्ड क्वाइट फार बैक, जब इस तरह से देयर वाज नॉट सच अ स्ट्रॉन्ग रिएक्शन टू सम थिंग्स. मे बी एट दैट टाइम इट वाज नॉट, you know, being seen as the male gaze or something like that, to talk about you know, women gossiping a lot, or oh, I'm so scared of my wife and things like that. So I feel that that is a part of some very important books of mine of satire, you know.
Yeah.
One of my most, or the most popular writers is a satirist, और उनके यहाँ काफ़ी इस तरह की चीज़ें होती हैं जो आज थोड़ी सी खटकती हैं, यू नो.
कौन है ये?
हाँ, और कुछ अब लोगों ने उस पे कभी कभी किसी महफिल में एतराज़ भी कर लेते हैं. बट ही इज़ अ ग्रेट राइटर, ही इज़ अ ग्रेट सैटिरिस्ट, एंड यू नो, यू कांट टेक दैट अवे फ्रॉम हिम, एंड आई वुड नॉट स्टॉप पब्लिशिंग हिम. एंड आई कीप थिंकिंग, you know, that this was a part of the norm when he started writing.
Yeah.
It's not that anymore. Maybe if he was now writing, he would be more aware of
Yes.
this and not put it like that. And he's, you know, so, and in his, you know, in my personal interactions with him, I never found him to be,
Inappropriate,
you know, in any way.
disrespectful or anything.
So that has been there.
Yeah.
But
No, I understand what you're saying. I mean, I think there is like a new gray area, because now as a writer, if you're writing something, and especially if you want to publish, you cannot be completely tone deaf right now,
Yeah.
right? Like you have to be conscious of
Yeah.
these things when you take it, especially to a Western publisher. But I think even locally now, these things will be noticed. Okay, is there something that's so problematic that's going to cause a reduction in sales, for example? It will immediately be noticed. So we can't completely do away with this conversation, but I think everyone's coming up with their own methods, I guess, of engaging with it. Or this makes me also think about censorship in general and what is allowed in literature in any given moment. लिटरेचर का हमारा बहुत लंबा ट्रेडिशन है ऑफ रेजिस्टेंस, लिटरेचर एज अ फॉर्म ऑफ रेजिस्टेंस विद द प्रोग्रेसिव राइटर्स मूवमेंट. काशिफ, आपकी जो किताब थी, जो योर ट्रांसलेशन ऑफ A Case of Exploding Mangoes into Urdu. We were just talking about that. How was that process? Firstly, like of translating it. I also want to hear a little bit about that. कि वो कैसा experience था of translating it into Urdu, and then the circulation or lack of circulation of that. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, when I had read that novel, I thought that I was reading that novel in Urdu. That may be a strange thing for you, but I didn't read it in English. Most of our writers, they try to write an English which is foreign to our land, but the English that is used in this Exploding Mangoes was very much the language that I had been hearing in my life. The second thing is that my background is also that my father was also in Pakistan Air Force. So the sort of English, the type of English that the characters of that novel were using was very familiar for me. So basically I tend to say it everywhere that that English novel was the one that I read in Urdu, even before translating it. So, and the second thing is that I thought that this novel must be in Urdu because the experience that was presented in that novel was a very desi experience. So, as I said, I read that novel in Urdu, so I wanted to translate that into Urdu so that it becomes a common experience as well. And I thought that we, the Urdu writers, should have written such a novel. So by translating it, I was trying to make up for this lack of Urdu fiction. Some people used to write in Zia's era, but most of those writings were symbolic, not as direct as Muhammad Hanif's novel. And Muhammad Hanif could be direct because he was writing in English. And the problem that I faced after publishing the translation was the same, that those things that Hanif wrote in English and he saved his soul, he could save his soul. If he wrote those things in Urdu, he wouldn't have been able to save his soul. So when I translated it, and it was a very direct satire, so we all had to pay some price, and that was the copies of that novel was confiscated.
मुझे वो शेर याद आ रहा है, वो बात जिसका जिक्र सारे फसाने में ना था, वो बात उनको बहुत नागवार गुजरी.
नहीं, वो उस पे इतराज़ ये है कि जो बात सारे फसाने में जिसका जिक्र ना था और जो नागवार नहीं गुजरी थी इंग्लिश में,
हाँ, वो उर्दू में नागवार
डाल दी है.
हाँ,
उसमें ऑब्वियस हो गई.
एब्सोल्युटली. आई थिंक यही तो बात है कि जब आप उस ज़बान में बात करते हैं जो अगले की ज़बान है, तो सब कुछ आई थिंक इट्स लाइक लेड बेयर, इट्स कम्प्लीटली नेकेड, विच इज़ वाई आई फील लाइक व्हेन आई टॉक टू अदर फ्रेंड्स हु आर राइटर्स राइट नाउ इन लाहौर एंड देयर बाइलिंगुअल लाइक ऑल ऑफ अस, तो वो बहुत से कहते हैं कि हमारे लिए इंग्लिश में लिखना इमोशनल ऑनेस्टी से आसान है और उर्दू में मुश्किल है, विच इज़ अनफॉर्चुनेट ऑल्सो, because they don't feel that they want to face certain things, emotional truths, etc. In Urdu, उनको लगता है वो बहुत straightforward होगा. English provides some kind of cognitive or some kind of barrier that allows them to write in some kind of paradoxical way.
नहीं, उसमें जिस चीज़ पर एतराज़ था उस नावल में, वो गालियाँ थीं जिनको मैंने इंग्लिश से उर्दू में ट्रांसलेट कर दिया था. तो वही गाली हम इंग्लिश में अगर बक दें, जिसको गाली को बकना ही कहते हैं, तो इंग्लिश में वो आम यूज़ होती हैं, बल्कि बच्चे भी यूज़ कर रहे होते हैं. बट व्हेन दोज आर ट्रांसलेटेड इनटू उर्दू, तो फिर हमें बड़ी डायरेक्ट लगती है. बल्कि जैसे हम देखते हैं कि बच्चे कुत्ते को डॉग कह रहे थे, मामा मैंने डॉग देखा, मामा डॉग आ रहा है, उसको उर्दू में भी नहीं कर रहे होते. कि कोई अगर कुत्ता बोल दे तो कहते हैं, शिकायत कर रहे होते हैं मेरे बच्चे भी कि मामा ये जो है ना, इसने वो बोला है जो डॉग को उर्दू में नहीं कहते, वो बोल रहा था जी.
Absolutely agreed. I face the same problem with my kids sometimes कि इंग्लिश में वो बात फ्लैटर लगती है somehow, और उर्दू में हम ज़्यादा डर जाते हैं जब बच्चा वही बात करे. और actually theoretically गालियाँ are one of those words that are very specific to any vernacular and that show something about a culture. Elena Ferrante's My Brilliant Friend is a brilliant novel because she writes in the local language about the actual specific language, even the idioms, even the slangs, even the curse words of that space. I'm moving a bit away from, Ji, please. Yes.
Add that it's not just curse words.
Yes.
It's certain scenarios that you cannot easily translate into Urdu, which
Yes.
I was, very. When I was reading The Vegetarian, and then when I read the translation and when I was editing it, so of course उसमें एक पूरा chapter है which in Urdu it's reads very explicit.
Yes.
In English you read it, as normally, but when you read it in Urdu it seems very explicit and you think, how do I mask this word?
Yes.
And you can't, because that chapter is so much a part of that
Integral.
whole thing, So these are the things that you face when you're.
What did you do in that instance? How have you navigated this
We
thing in that?
couldn't
translation?
change much of it. Some words we sort of tried to, use the less objectionable words for it, so that, not Persianized, but just so that it wouldn't be like slang or it wouldn't be. I don't know. It was a little difficult, but
Yeah.
I think we managed.
And is that out yet, or is it going to?
Oh yeah, it's been out
It's
for
been
a
out.
year. It's
And
almost
Kangs the
sold out.
Vegetarian.
Gee.
I don't think most people know about it. I'm so happy we're talking about this. We need to be buying this and
it was
reading
a
it.
big news because
Yeah.
when we went, it had just gone to press and Han Kang got the Nobel.
Oh, just at that
so
time.
it really became huge
Okay,
on social
okay.
media and all that.
Amazing. Guys, so this
Yeah,
book is available
so
in
it
Urdu
was-
now.
yeah.
Absolutely wonderful. I think before we kind of move towards the end of the discussion, I'm again coming back to the personal, and I'll ask Daisy, I'll ask you this question first. So one of my favorite poems is Kamala Das, who also writes in English. She says, I am brown, I am Indian, very brown, born in Malabar. I speak 3 languages, write in 2, dream in 1. So what is the one language that you dream in? What are the languages you write in? Is it different?
Well, I mean, it's English, but there are there's always lots of Urdu and Hindi floating in my head, so snatches will come into the dreamscape, and I think I don't write in Urdu, but I do a lot of calligraphy. So I write not my original compositions, but I like to write in Urdu and paint in Urdu.
And do you find yourself thinking sometimes in Urdu in the same way?
Yeah, sometimes definitely. Yeah.
Because just before this panel, we were sitting together and just talking, and at the end, Daisy said to me, "Ke, by the way, Nika, you don't have to translate for me. Like, don't forget that I know Urdu," and that's something we often do with,
you
with
kept
people.
switching back. and forth.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
It's unconscious.
yeah.
So I want to kind of pay attention to this more unconscious bit. Okay, so you sometimes end up thinking in Urdu, Hindi.
Yeah, I mean, it usually has to be situation specific. Like if I'm imagining talking to a certain person, that I only speak Urdu, and then I think Urdu.
Okay.
You know.
And Kashif, you?
Multilingualism is very specific to our country, and one of the topics of my novel is also multilingualism, and I've used at least 3 languages in my novel. There are certain passages which are in English as well. There are certain passages which are in Punjabi as well, because I think that language is very specific to a certain character. When you are building a character, you have to talk with that character in a language which is familiar to him, which is familiar to that particular character. So one of my characters was a village child, a 14-year-old child. And when I was writing about that character, when I was building that character in Urdu, I thought that if I didn't allow him to speak Punjabi, he wouldn't be able to express the complete personality of himself.
Yeah.
So I wrote certain passages in Punjabi as well for that particular character. And as far as the dreams are concerned, I am originally a Punjabi, but I have been living in Karachi for so many years that I have stopped dreaming in Punjabi. But I do understand Punjabi. But whenever I come to Lahore, Punjabi sort of reignites in me. So I'm able to speak Punjabi here. But when I'm in Karachi, even if some relative calls me and
Yeah.
speaks Punjabi with me, I feel a certain difficulty in replying to him. But as far as dreams are concerned, alas, I'm now dreaming in Urdu and sometimes in English, but not in Punjabi.
So geographic location
Thankfully.
does impact the language.
Yeah, sure. That's
That
that's
you
why I
speak.
understand people who are living in England and who used to speak
sure.
Punjabi and Urdu here, but now we blame them for writing in English. But I can understand them that they have left the society in which they were speaking Punjabi or Urdu, and now they are living in a society where they have to all the time, 24 hours, 24/7, they have to speak English. So it's better for them to use English, and you should write in a language in which you can express yourself completely, whether it's English or Urdu or Punjabi.
And Huri, for you, is there any particular personal relation with languages? किस language से आपको ज़्यादा feel होता है कि that is the language close to my spirit जिसमें मैं अपने आप को सबसे ज़्यादा अपना इजहार अच्छी तरह कर सकती हूँ?
You know, I find sometimes I find myself really muddled up because all my early education was in English, all my higher education was in Russian, but at home we speak Urdu.
Yeah.
So if I sit down to write, and I am trying to sit down to write, I want to pen my memoirs, but I get very mixed up. So I've sort of given up on using one language. In fact, I was mentioning this to Zahra Nigah Sahiba, and she said, "बेटा तुम जो तुम्हें जिस वक्त लगे उस ज़बान में तुम लिख लो, फिर बाद में देख लेना when you're putting it together as a book." तो अब मैं यही करती हूँ कि मैं उर्दू में आ रहा है तो उर्दू में लिखती हूँ, इंग्लिश में आ रहा है तो इंग्लिश में, रशियन में नहीं लिखा है अभी तक, और ख्वाब मैं उर्दू में देखती हूँ.
My final question for this panel is, why is it important for us to read works in translation? I think I see a lot of students in this audience also, like this whole supposedly dry topic of translation. हम क्यों इस पे पैनल करें, क्यों ये ज़रूरी है कि हम ये बातें करें? मैं आप तीनों से पूछना चाहती हूँ कि क्या ट्रांसलेशन का रेजिस्टेंस से कोई ताल्लुक है? Why is it important to enlarge our worldview or read, like go beyond what is familiar to us and the 2 or 3 known authors, but actually venture out of our space and read works in translation? And maybe we can start with Daisy.
Okay, so yeah, I try. I'm another one of my diets. I said I'm only reading women, but I also try to only read translation unless there's some reason why I have to read something in English or, you know, like there's a really important book that's just come out. But otherwise, I try to only read in translation, and the reason for that is I think that translation just stretches our imagination. Like the translators had to go through so much stretching to create the language of the translation, and it makes you see language in a different way, but also culture. And what I like to say is that the translations are sort of like eavesdropping on a conversation that's not meant for you. And that is just so mind-boggling that that's possible, that you could listen in to all these different conversations that are so far outside of your own world. So it broadens our minds and it broadens our horizons. And so I don't think that translation is a dry subject at all. It's very exciting and transgressive because it takes us over borders that we are not necessarily able to cross physically, but we can cross them mentally and we become better for it.
Thank you. That's a lovely answer. Thank you. Kashif.
Yeah, I think translation is very important because of 2 main reasons. One is that for me, the experience of living is very important. So if I want to know the experience of living of other countries, like how the Africans are feeling, how the Africans are experiencing the experience of living, I can only know that by their writings, and also their original writings, not by people who are writing in English. not by people. Not if I want to know how is the Nigerian society, I would prefer that I go to some Nigerian writer who is writing in Nigerian or their particular language instead of a Nigerian writing in English. So that experience of living is very important for me, and I want to eavesdrop, as Daisy said, eavesdrop to their experiences. And the other is that the multiplicity of structures that different countries and different cultures and especially different languages have experienced because of so many writers. So when I am reading those writers in Urdu, I sort of experience the replication of those strange structures, the strange structures in which they have written down their experience of living. So that's how it's very important for me. And also it's very important that I go towards the translators who are very keen, diligent translators, so that I've got a honest translation of a novel or of a piece of art. That's also very important, that I go towards a very honest translator, like Muhammad Salimur Rahman is one, like Asif Farruhi Sahab was one, like Ajmal Kamal is one. So it's also very important to go to a very honest translator.
Thank you, honest translator. Huri,
I think, of course, both of them have said it, and I can only reiterate that if not for translation, we would be living in this very narrow world, not knowing what is happening, in the minds of peoples from other cultures, other parts of the world. As Kashif said, is their lived experience the same as ours? If it's different, why is it different? And the importance is, even if we take the two examples of what you've mentioned, the Russian play that I translated.
yes.
I mean, it was a play by a Russian journalist and writer, and it was based in Chile. It was
Yes.
about Chile, but it was translated by me during the Ziaul Haq era, and it was performed, and it was actually translated to be performed on stage.
Wow.
And it was performed on stage, and it was called in the different. And the importance is, even if we take the two examples of what you've mentioned, the Russian play that I translated.
Yes.
I mean, it was a play by a Russian journalist and writer, and it was based in Chile. It was
Yes.
about Chile, but it was translated by me during the Ziaul Haq era, and it was performed, and it was actually translated to be performed on stage.
Wow.
And it was performed on stage, and it was called in the title in Urdu was Ek Jala Watan Se Interview. And it was so powerful because the audience got it. What the censors didn't get, the audience got. That this is a direct parallel with what we are living through. And the same with Hanif's book.
Yeah.
While it was in English, there were so many editions published, there were so many editions sold in Pakistan. As soon as it was published in Urdu, and there was the fear that it's going to reach a wider audience in Pakistan, the book was confiscated. So that's why translation is also important.
So language has to do with access and dissemination and being known, and what language a text appears in has a huge effect on the power of that text. I think that's what I deduced from what you said. And so many of you said so many nice lines. I've written down some of them, which I want to recapitulate before we end. One of them is the lived experience for us, many of us, is in Urdu literature, not necessarily in English. Another is translation as a way of eavesdropping on other cultures, on other people's lives, on other worlds that we don't know. Translation stretches our imagination, you said. And I've written Muhammad Hanif could be direct because he was writing in English in Pakistan, which leads us to think about a lot of things. And on this note, I'd like to thank all of you for joining me on this. This has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you.